Welcome to the Atomic Real Estate Show, Philadelphia's #1 real estate podcast and a Direct Subs production. Real estate investing is not rocket science, and on our show, we'll delve into best practices with a focus on the small things that add up over time. Please enjoy the authentic, informative, and actionable show with our host, Paul Jagelski.
Hello and welcome to the Atomic Real Estate Show, a podcast dedicated to exploring the world of real estate investing in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just getting started in the industry, this show is for you. Join us as we dive into the latest trends and insights in the Philadelphia real estate market and hear from expert guests who share their knowledge and expertise within investing in this dynamic city. This show is brought to you by DirectSubs.com. Please check them out at DirectSubs.com. Focusing on building connections for investors and contractors throughout the greater Philadelphia area. The Atomic Real Estate Show is your go-to resource for all things real estate in Philadelphia. I am Paul Jagelski, your host. Now sit back, relax, and let's explore the atomic world of real estate together with our guest, Julia from Brick House Builders on Instagram. Julia, welcome, and please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here today. And I just want to say that I'm so excited for this because I just love talking real estate with other passionate real estate investors and people passionate about, wealth building through real estate. My name is Julia Chosi. My company is Brick House Builders. I've been a full-time real estate investor since 2016. I have done everything from fix and flips, buy and holds, wholesaling. I now have been focusing on building a real estate portfolio that pays me passive income so that I could achieve financial freedom. A lot of my focus the last few years has really been in the construction, project management, and design space. I really love construction, and I got my general contractor license pretty early on in my real estate investing career. And what that looked like was project managing all of my renovation projects and getting involved in every phase of the project, from pre-development to hiring contractors to designing the space, to I ending up starting an interior design company and helping other investors and homeowners design their space. And, these days I have, reached my initial goal of financial freedom. So my structure of business looks a lot different. I had a 5-year goal of, I'm going to hustle and grind and reach this point. And I invest in real estate for financial freedom, for time freedom, for location freedom, to not have to worry about money. So I have to stay aware that I'm not getting caught up in building businesses and giving myself more jobs because, my why is freedom. So, this season of my life is, all right, I have the real estate portfolio to, provide that freedom. So what does it look like going forward? And I, of course, probably always invest in real estate. And now I get to do it from a place of, passion and joy as the forefront, rather than, I need to get this done in 9 months. I have investors to pay off. I have loans to pay off. The real estate market is changing. So that's just kind of what the transition has looked like from then until now.
I mean, you hit on so many different things there. That's amazing. First and foremost, your why of being time and location freedom is awesome. Most people just really stick to the money part, but the fact that you're throwing in there that there's time and location, which I kind of want to hit on, because where are you right now?
I'm in Puerto Rico.
Yes. And that kind of brings me to my next point out of it. You mentioned a couple of things that you're involved with. Interior design company you started, construction GC license you got, you project manage your stuff and other people's. I want to talk about how you're a U.S. investor and now an international investor, an Instagram influencer, a mentor that you also teach classes for people. You have your own podcast. What else are you doing? And talk about some of those things for us.
Yes. So, oh my gosh, I don't know even which direction to start. But at the core, I am just I'm a hippie, right? Like, and we started this YouTube channel, me and another real estate investor, and it's called The Strategic Hippie, right? Because what I want to do with my life, honestly, like it has to have, like wealth building has to be the foundation, or else I can't just like, play on the farm and work on my homestead and do all these things so freely. Like, unfortunately, we need wealth to be able to access freedom. So that has always been, the foundation. And, in the beginning, it was kind of tough, right? Because I don't look like your typical real estate investor. I'm going into these spaces with, real estate developers and investors, and I don't dress like them. I don't have goals like them. I see them like 20 years deep, hustle and grinding. And it's just like, I don't want that. How can I do this strategically so that I can benefit off of the power of real estate investing, but not lose my life to it at the same time? So that's kind of how the Strategic Hippie was born, and how, I in the beginning, like I had to put a lot of time and, intention on the people that I was surrounding myself with. Because I from listening to podcasts and just kind of like having a background in psychology and human resources and understanding like how important influence was to me, I had to be around specifically like other women who were like taking space in the real estate world, and people who thought like me and had similar goals like me. And once I was able to know that there's a community out there that I could access, then I was like, I need this to go further. And, if I could do it, other people could do it. And that was always like a big part of like my journey in the beginning. It was like, if someone like me who started with no money, with no partners, with no like my family doesn't come from real estate development. I'm like starting from scratch. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and I found Bigger Pockets, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna do this thing. And once I realized and confirmed that this was not only available to me, that I could leverage these things and build this life of my dreams, I was like, other people need to know this. And I met who now is one of my partners in the education piece. I teach construction management to real estate investors through the Better Than Success Real Estate League. And I met Nicole, who's the founder of BTS, what we call it. And, when I met her and we kind of aligned energetically, I was like, we need to take this information and help other people. Because when I got started in construction, let me tell you, there is no class out there to teach real estate investors how to manage their construction projects. And I had to learn the hard way and lose a lot of money and learn a lot what not to do. And I was just kind of like gathering all this information, and I was like, we need to get this to other real estate investors. And that's kind of how the construction management class came to be, which we teach twice a year to like a small group of people who are all actively investing in real estate and looking for ways to, save money on construction, to get more efficient at managing construction, to get better at numbers, all of those things.
That's absolutely phenomenal. And I mean, our vision's kind of in line, because that's our whole thing with this podcast, is just connecting people. There's so much information out there, and there's just no way to actually connect everybody. So yeah, let's bring it together. Let's have everybody happy, and let's bring some good investors into Philadelphia. Why don't we?
Absolutely. And I used to cling to these corny little phrases like, your net worth is your network. And it's not what you know, it's who you know. But man, is that the truth? Like, there is not a problem today that I will encounter that does not have a solution from somebody else in my network at some point. Like, really every deal that I've ever had come across my lap, every problem that I've had solved, all the money that I've raised, like everything really just comes down to, people I've previously put myself in a room with and let them know what I do and what my goals are. And then plant that seed. And a few years later, it's like, oh, who's done this before? Or, maybe I'm on the other side of that. And they're like, oh, who buys in Strawberry Mansion? And then I get the phone call, hey, we have this deal and thought of you. And, really investing a lot of time into your network and resources, just like this, like listening to podcasts and, you know, staying aware of like what's going on in your space and who's doing what is like a big part of the foundation here.
It's so true. I mean, how many times can you say that that $5 coffee or that $7 beer turned out to be, as you say, hey, I got a phone call from that person 3 months later, 2 years later, but it brought me a property, it brought me an opportunity. And it's all just because I was willing to sit down, listen, talk to, and connect with somebody. And that's, as you said, that's such a big part of real estate, is just connecting with people, even after the project's done, and putting tenants in place or home buyers in place. Connecting with them is so important within real estate. I love that you do that. It's awesome. If anybody hasn't been to your Instagram page, please go there while you're listening to this, so you can put a face to Julia, because your projects are phenomenal. They are so cool looking, and those are the Philadelphia projects. I can't wait to see your PR projects that are coming up. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing down there.
Yeah, so speaking of networking, I'll share this. Like, I've been here for about 4 months, and it's always been my dream to come to Puerto Rico. I have family here. I used to visit here a lot. I just absolutely fell in love, and it feels like home. But everything's a little bit like harder here, specifically. Like, the infrastructure isn't as good. Obviously, there's a language barrier. They don't have as many resources. The technology hasn't caught up. There's a lot of stuff. So for me, it was important to again, build that wealth that could provide me to take this leap and be financially secure. And, I came here to buy a specific property, and this property is a 15-acre, what I envision being like a retreat center, event space. It's a really unique project. It's got, a huge event space. It's got over 10 rooms. It's got a second building. There's just so much potential. And I came here to really take this thing off the ground. And I got here January 9th. Closing was the 13th. We are now doing this podcast, at the end of April, and I still haven't closed on this property.
Oh, no!
Yeah, so of course, things haven't been going as planned, which is fine because, I am where I'm supposed to be. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, whatever that looks like. I'm just here being like, what's next? But I will say that, I came here and started from scratch. I had no network. I had obviously no employees or resources or familiarity of where to even shop and how to order things. I was really starting from scratch. And of course there was those moments of utter panic of what am I doing? And then what I did was I did what I did when I started real estate in Philly in 2016. And I started going to networking events, and I started meeting people for coffee. And I started just being new and planting these seeds. And I'm again reminded at the power of just showing up in spaces with other people, because I had the thought, I was I'd love to buy a smaller building, because this other project is a really big undertaking. I was I'd like to buy a small project that is in the city, because I spent a lot of time in the city. And I go to this event, and the first person that I talked to was a real estate investor or a real estate agent. And I was yeah, if you have any listings, I'm kind of looking for a cheap, small, easy project in San Juan. I'm down here a lot. And he was oh, I have this listing around the corner. If you want, I can show it to you. It's very, very casual. So I didn't get too excited. And I saw it, and this thing is it checks all the boxes. And I went and saw it a few days later. I was this is crazy. I made an offer. It got accepted the same day. And, today I'm literally sitting in the garage of this property right now, and I have someone working upstairs, and we're cleaning it out. And, it's really just because I show up to a room one time and meet one person. That's really all that was.
That's awesome. So, that's the stars aligning for you. I mean, do you read Gary Vee's books?
I have in the past. It's been a long time, but when I used to get into it, Gary Vee a lot.
Your personality is very much like what he resonates, you know, always happy, always chipper, looking for the positive, don't be pessimistic. And he goes into it because, you know, if you're always positive, positive things will find you. And if you're always negative, negative things will find you. You're a perfect example of just being positive, positive things will happen to you. And it's awesome how you're relating that into real estate and you're literally living it day by day doing it, which is so cool.
Yeah, and it really comes down to, you know, the scarcity versus abundance mindset. And I talk about that a lot with like new investors because that's the foundation, right? Like when people say, oh, I can't raise private money because I don't have anyone in my life with money. I'm like, okay, money is abundant. People with money is abundant. Everywhere you go, there's people with money, whether you know it or not. And once I kind of flipped that switch, like there it was all over. College roommates, you know, friends of friends sitting at the bar. I was like, I'm going to invest in real estate. And, you know, I started raising money all over the place. And I was like, wow. Oh, there's a ton of that stuff around, huh?
I don't need mine. I can use other people's to do this.
Exactly. Like after I bought my first house and I considered myself a real estate investor, I like quit my job and, you know, started full time. I had $11 in my bank account.
That's awakening.
Yeah. And like at the time it was like I didn't have any living expenses because I was house hacking and I was actually making like $200, which I was using to pay for like groceries and, you know, keeping myself alive. And I was really like in this position of like, hey, I'm going all in. And I was raising money and using hard money loans and kind of structuring it in all these different creative ways so that you don't have to have money to invest in real estate if you have the time and you have the knowledge. And those are the things that I could offer people. Like I knew real estate at this point. I was spending all my time listening to podcasts and reading books and going to events and taking notes. And, you know, a lot of people don't have the time to do that. They're working full-time jobs and making a ton of money.
That's so true. And it goes back to what we keep coming up with every guest is staying in your lane, knowing your strengths. You know, you knew what you had to offer and you knew what other people had to offer and you made that happen. You know, so maybe somebody's the money person and they need somebody like you and they want to be invested in real estate, but they don't have the time and they don't have the knowledge. That's a perfect marriage out of it. So as you say, no matter where you are within your journey, there's other people out there that can help you and support you to get to where you want to be. Where you're weak, they're strong, and you just network with them and you'll find them and things will happen, especially if you stay positive.
Absolutely. I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to like be this amazing ray of light all the time. Like, of course, like there's times where I like get fearful or stressed out, and it's just like taking the pause and being like, well, first of all, this is a pretty privileged problem. Like I like laugh at myself sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, look at me with my real estate investor problem. You know, like if like 10 years ago, like young me knew that I was going to have, if I was going to be stressed out about my real estate investing career, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to be a real estate investor. You know, so sometimes it's just like, you know, staying present because this stuff can get so, like relative, right? Like the other day I had a really good conversation with a friend who we were talking about how every time we like set out to achieve something, the second we get there, we're like, what's next? What's next? And like, we never get to just like sit and enjoy and be proud and like just relish in the hard work and the thing that we've accomplished. And like, that's where the joy is. Right. So it's like, you know, that's a big part of the journey too. And I think that a lot of people get caught up in that and just like, if I just did this or if I just had that, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be successful. Then I'll be proud of myself. And, incorporating that into the journey, it's like, why are we doing this? Why are we investing in real estate? Why are we building wealth? Is it to be stressed and spend all our time working?
No.
Probably not.
I could do that elsewhere. But
Right.
And going back to what you originally said, that's where I love it. Your why is about more time and location freedom than it is about the money part about it, because the money brings one aspect, but it doesn't bring, as you say, everything. How many times we sit there and hear these celebrities or these influencers have all the money in the world, but they still got real life issues, don't they? If we break it down, time, location, the people you're with, those are the important things. Those are what's going to bring you the happiness and the joy. We just got to find the means that, we can make the money to have those things, and we got to have fun doing it. You can't just be miserable making a ton of money and not enjoy the time, the location, or the people you're with. It's just not possible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you're starting a podcast, right? Or relaunch?
We started a YouTube channel.
Okay.
Me and a friend of mine. It's like a real estate investing business, spirituality. It's called the Strategic Hippie. So
Okay.
It's basically like the anti-capitalist capitalist.
I love it. How often does that air?
We haven't launched it yet. We have about 6 episodes in the vault. We're working on our editing, so pretty soon it's gonna be on YouTube. Maybe by the time this airs, people can go check out that show.
That's what I like to hear. I like to send people places that you're gonna be at. And then you said twice a year you do your mentoring classes. What time of the year do you do those?
So we're doing one right now. We actually just Saturday we finished up our spring cohort. So we usually do it in the fall and the spring, and it's a 4-week, pretty intensive course on construction management for real estate investors. So that's whether you want to be a general contractor and manage your own project that way, or if maybe that's not what you want to do and you just want to get more efficient at managing your GC and, having renovation projects go on budget and on timeline. That's a good fit as well.
How do people sign up for it?
They can go to betterthansuccess.com/CM, letter C, the letter M, for construction management. And that's where we have all of our information on the class.
Nice. What else do I got here for you? Oh yeah, you talked about you started an interior design company. How's that going for you?
Yeah, what's awesome? So my interior design partner is flying in today to Puerto Rico to help me with this new project. So this week we're going to be like, ripping and running and getting paint colors and furniture and ripping out the kitchen and transforming the space. And what we do, we offer services for both real estate investors and homeowners. So real estate investors that don't want to get involved in the design aspect of their project. Like, I don't want to pick out the tile and the hardware and the kitchen cabinets and what faucet to use. Like, there's so many little details in a project. So we can kind of take that whole part of the project off of your hands and simplify it. Or if, our last client built them the whole new construction house on the main line, and we did everything from flooring, trim, doors, interior, colors, exterior paint colors, down to the kitchens, the bathrooms. And we work with them to first figure out what their design is. Like, most people can tell you what they like and what they don't like, but they can't put a name to their design, or they can't kind of like put everything together. So we start our process with our clients by, figuring out what your style is. And, that usually takes a few different meetings of like narrowing down, different like different styles, and a lot of times it's a couple, right? So we're now marrying two different styles together. So that's actually the hardest part that people underestimate. It's like, all right, we don't get to just like get started right away to renovating your house. Like there's like layers to it. What's the feeling of the space that you want? What's the purpose of the room? Who's going to be using it? What's the lighting? What time of the day you're going to be in here? And, you know, all of that. And that's, you know, the journey that we go on with clients to transform their spaces.
Yeah, but as you say, that's like the majority of the skipped over part that people don't think about. You know, they want to take on a project, and as you say, they want to jump to demoing. And then all of a sudden, great, you got a demo, but you didn't think about the space. You didn't think about what your finish is. You didn't think about time frames. And now all of a sudden you're piecing things together just to get it back because now you have a demoed something and it just doesn't make sense when you throw it back. So that's awesome that you're actually spending that time figuring out who they are, what they like, time of day is. Oh, I can't tell you how important that part is. And just actually marrying all those thoughts because yes, men and women do tend to have different ideas for spaces, colors, and uses.
Yes. Yeah.
Even man, even woman. When there's a partner involved, there's usually opposites in there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So what's your website for that, and what's the name?
Our company is called Stone and Sage Interiors. You go to stoneandsageinteriors.com and we do free consultations. So if you're considering, you know, renovating a bathroom or a kitchen or taking on a big project, you can meet with us and we can tell you all about how we can help you through that process. Or if you just have some basic questions, you can do a consultation and we can go through that process as well. That's stoneandsageinteriors.com.
Dang, I love it. So we've got your Instagram handle, we've got your interior designing, we've got your YouTube channel coming out. Does your contracting license carry a company along with that?
So actually, this is kind of part of the real estate investing piece. So I got my general contractor license. I would say in 2017, I was maybe servicing clients here and there. But I use my license specifically for my own projects.
Okay.
So that company isn't necessarily for hire, but that company does the, you know, classes, the coaching, the mentorship, the consultations, things like that. So, you know, as real estate investors, we like if we're doing fix and flips or any kind of, you know, maybe it's the Burr method, but we have construction projects. There's a lot of control and power in having your general contractor license. And one of my favorite things is I close on a property, I leave the closing table, I can get my building permit.
Yeah.
I'm not calling someone else and waiting for someone else to do it. There's an issue, I'll talk about this just for a moment. Like a few other things that I've really loved about being a licensed general contractor. You know, I pull my own permits for my own projects. I save the money that I would be paying another general contractor who I end up babysitting. And I always say the term like, I GC'd my GC, right? And I have control of the timeline. I have control of the cost. I get to actually know what everything costs because, you know, I'm now hiring the plumber, the electrician, the HVAC tech separately. So, you know, with proper cost tracking, you know, now when I do my next project, I know, hey, this is exactly what it costs for these specific things, and I can now budget my next project. Another thing that, you know, if the deal is structured properly, I could pay myself for managing my own projects, which, you know, is another thing because that money that you're saving by hiring out someone else can now get passed to you. So there was just like so many benefits of structuring it that way. And I just love being on site and having all of the control of coordinating and timelines and orders. And, you know, if something goes wrong and we need to like jump on a solution, I'll like think of something really simple. Like the front door came in the wrong size. So like me, this is my project. I immediately are like, okay, let me call the supplier and get right on this. there tends to be a little bit less, generally, a little bit less of that sense of urgency and care from someone that you're paying to manage your project, because at the end of the day, it's not theirs.
Right. Yep.
So I've seen a lot of benefit in just like being able to jump on problems immediately and not having a middleman. And it's funny that, I talk about it that way because now at this point in the journey, it's like I outsource anything possible, like, I was like kind of like had my hands on. And if I were to choose something to have my hands on, it's definitely construction. I just have so much fun on a job site and designing, and Home Depot is like, or a good hardware store is like my favorite thing. People make fun of me. I like found this place here in San Juan the other day, and it's like this amazing hardware store, and it's like so organized, and it has like a lumber yard, and it has like this amazing like showroom, and I'm like geeking out about this hardware store. And then someone's like, "Are you excited about a hardware store?" And I like kind of pause. I'm like, "Yeah, this is." This is my life now. This is what I get excited for.
It's amazing the freedom and the joy that comes from a work site, though. I'm 100% with you. Like being on a work site just feels exhilarating. You feel light. You feel free. The ideas can flow. People are like, I don't know. I 100% agree to you. And then when you get to go to, as you say, a hardware store and actually like start piecing little things down the road together and matching and pairing, and I don't know. I agree. There is a fun little passion with it, and I think that's what actually like keeps bringing me back to real estate, is that zen moment of having the construction site. I just being able to unfocus and just go at it.
Absolutely.
But you brought up a good thing about your finances and your software, or if you're using software is my question. And you have so many different streams of different ins, outs, and everything. Are you using software to track all of this?
Yes, and this is something that, is so important, because when I first got started, I grew really fast. Like I went from not having any real estate to having, half a dozen projects open at the same time. And I'm like hiring subcontractors and I'm buying material, and I had no system in place to track everything. And man, if I could go back in time and change one thing, that would be it.
So what is it? What's the software you're using for all of us that are not and wishing that we are?
I mean, right now I just use QuickBooks, and that is because that's, talking a little bit about how I started and how it was such a, for lack of a better word, shit show. With my tracking of everything, and it took like hiring a bookkeeper and accounting and really like get all of that stuff organized. And then now it's like, now I have systems in place. I use QuickBooks. I have an account set up for every company, and I have the most simple system. So, I use Google Drive and Dropbox, and anytime I buy something, I scan it with my phone and upload it, and I rename it with the dollar amount, the store, and what it was for. And then maybe at this point, I don't have as many transactions in and out as I used to. So I sit down for a few hours once a month, and I go through QuickBooks, and I have my Dropbox or Google Drive on one screen, and I type in the dollar amount, and it pops right up. Hey, this was $77 for this project from this account. And I go, doo-doo-doo. And it's like just so basic and simple. And that's kind of how I like things to be. I don't use any like super fancy software. I never got on Builder Trend or any of those like complex technologies that, I'm a pen and paper type person. Yep. So for me to use like Google Drive, that's like a huge thing, but it works so well. And like something that was really important to me was not losing my mind at tax time. Like I grew up, my dad was an entrepreneur. He had a business for decades, and every year he would go on a sabbatical, and he would go missing for a week to do his taxes, and he'd come back and be like, oh my God, and I would just like kind of like I was like be traumatized, be like, I don't want to have to do that when I grow up. And now it's like, now I'm an entrepreneur and I have multiple businesses. I do everything in my power to not get stressed out at tax time. So what that means, like, I just have a simple accounting software, and once a month or in lifetime, I update everything. So, hey, taxes are due, and I do a quick little audit. I pull the reports, make sure nothing needs to be classified, and then I'm done. It's like really simple and easy, and I do not get stressed about taxes.
That's awesome. Are you buying your properties in LLC or your personal name?
I buy them all in LLCs.
So you're doing taxes for each one of them then?
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
So I group them together. Like I buy a few properties in one LLC. But yeah, it's a separate return for each one, which, when you talk about the pros and cons in buying in LLCs, like if you're buying a large number of properties, you're going to buy 50 separate buildings. You need 50 separate LLCs. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but probably not. So, but if you're buying like apartment buildings, then maybe 4 apartment buildings, it might make sense to set them up as individual LLCs. To each their own. When it comes to this stuff, everyone has their way of doing it, but a big part for me is like obviously the tax part. Like I have to do a separate return for each property or for each LLC. So that's just how I've ended up doing it.
I agree with you 100% out of it. I think somebody gave me the advice somewhere between like 4 to 8 properties per LLC makes kind of good sense, depending upon, as you say, how big are each one of those properties. So somewhere around like under 10 doors is what the advice to me was.
Yeah.
Are you managing all your long-term holds, or are you using a property management company?
So I actually have hired a property manager, and it's been the best business decision that I have made thus far.
Ooh, can you name drop? Name drop.
Well, it's just like a guy who I hired full time. It's not a company.
Oh.
Yeah, and like he has a construction background. He's like a handyman. He's amazing with tenants. I just really love him as a person, and I put him in one of my units and let him live for free. And he handles all tenant correspondence, which to me, like, oh my God, like he's worth his weight in gold, because that's the hardest thing for me, is like being attached to my phone and being on the front line. If something were to go wrong, I'm like, I have to always make sure that my phone's on, like something.
Yeah.
I'm the first line of contact, and taking myself out of that position has been the most rewarding thing in the world. And even now today, I catch myself like grabbing my phone or like needing my phone on me and being like, wait, I don't need to have my phone on me right now. And I'm like, oh, this is an amazing feeling.
Can we say hashtag property management hack? I mean,
yes.
Talk about how to keep somebody accountable, you accountable, but yet everything's still flowing and your tenants aren't losing out. There's still somebody who's going to care versus just a property management company that they have no idea who to talk to on the other side of it. But that's awesome. That's the first time I've ever heard that. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's I'm really lucky, and everyone loves them. And there's other things that the most important thing to me with property management is like we have our scheduled calls. Like I just like drafted up a contract for the two of us, and it's like once a week we just touch base and, hey, what happened this week? What were the issues? And then once a month we touch base and maybe have a longer phone call of like any systems we can put in place to make either one of our lives easier. What about vacancies? More of the bigger ticket items. And he has this like understanding that like he doesn't call me unless it's an absolute emergency, which hasn't happened yet. Like, and the definition of emergency is different for people, right? Like, if there's nothing I can do personally in this moment, it's not worth the phone call. Like, right. He knows that I'm like on a different, but I'm like across a body of water. So when things go wrong, it's like, he's like, I'm just going to fix it. I'm just going to handle it. I'm just going to call who I have to call. And like, that is all I want out of a property manager. That is it.
That's awesome.
I want my real estate portfolio to be as passive as possible. And he gives me that gift.
I love it. I mean, the fact that, again, he's somebody that you trust. He's somebody that is going to take care of your properties because he's living in one of the properties. He's receiving payment in the form of free rent, which is phenomenal. He understands boundaries. I mean, those are the key things that you're looking for out of property managers, you know. And for anybody who's interviewing property managers out there, those are things that you should be asking them. And those are questions that you want to have answers to before you hire anybody. You know, is there going to be a threshold where you can say, hey, I have a $500 threshold. If it's under $500, don't call me, just get it done. You know, is there hey, as long as it's appliances or immediate fixtures like water damage or fire or anything along those lines, just get it done. Cost we'll figure out later. Get it done now. And to have someone who understands that to the point where they're not abusing it is phenomenal. And those are the questions you need to ask property managers, because there's too many times where I hear these clients of mine sit there and they come back. They're like, they never told me that they were going to treat my property this way. You never asked. You know, you never asked how often are you going in there. You never asked what your screening process is to get a new tenant in there. You never asked what your eviction process was. You never asked those little details, because that matters what tenant's going to be on the back end. So to find somebody that like that for you is phenomenal, and good for you. That's something that's great right there.
Absolutely. And I think a big part of, I like gave myself a promotion at some point in my career. It was like a few years ago. And I was just doing all the tasks. I was wearing way too many hats. And, you know, when you do too many things, you can't be good at any of them. Right. And I was like, had open projects. I was showing apartments. I was expediting for a parent. I was like just doing too much. And I told myself, if I could pay someone $250 or less, then I'm going to outsource it. And I put a dollar sign on my time, because it was kind of like, I need to give myself a promotion to focus on higher dollar ticket problems and opportunities, right? Like if I'm caught up in, you know, property management or expediting type tasks, then I'm not looking at apartment buildings or resorts or like starting a fund, like doing big things that are really going to, you know, level me up in my career. So I kind of had to start practicing that, and it freed up a lot of my time, right? So that's where I started getting like time freedom. Okay, so how am I using my time, and is it for the highest exer of value? And that's been a big part of, you know, growing in this journey.
I would say you've done a fantastic job at it, if not phenomenal, considering in under 7 years you went from your previous life to about, I don't know, I'll count 3 to 4 companies going on at once, if not more, 3 to 4 side things going on, and you've been able to move to PR for part of the year whenever you want. I mean, when does the book deal happen? When do you get to write this out so that everybody can read it and understand your step-by-step even better?
Yes, it my mind sometimes that, like, you know,
scaled
7 years ago, I was
phenomenally.
I was bartending, you know, like I was like working multiple jobs and like.
Well, you still are. now you're the business owner of those multiple jobs, but you're still working on them.
Yes, but like, man, I was pouring all of my time into like low value things for other people's businesses, and you know, that is just not something that I'm going to be willing to do ever again.
That's a really cool way to put that. Low value into other people's time out of it. That's cool out of it. And isn't that what the rat race is, unfortunately? I mean, it doesn't really matter what level you're at. You're doing it for somebody else's benefit. You're doing it for somebody else's retirement. So the fact that you were able to
Absolutely.
recognize that, and in 7 years, you make the rest of us look very lazy.
Well, and like there's nothing wrong with like people who are in that structure, but I just like beg these people to love your job. Like,
Yes.
please. Like, you don't have to be an entrepreneur. It's definitely not for everyone. Like, you know, if you work for someone else, like please love it. You know,
Yep.
that's all I ask is like, you know, because there's some people who are like doing some really, really cool projects and working for like these big, incredible companies doing, you know, really big work. And like, that's important. We need them. But
No, I
make
agree.
your money and invest it with us little folks so we can take your dollar farther and grow our real estate portfolio.
Yeah, see there's your next adventure. You can start a hard money company so people can invest their hard money into your company and you'll fund the projects on the back end out of it. See, there's your 2024 entrepreneurship.
Yes. New business of the year.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to kind of go back to Philadelphia for a quick second here. And you had mentioned you went into Strawberry Mansion at one point. What are you looking for in neighborhoods when you're looking for investments? Is it what the outcome is? If it's a buy hold, if it's a flip, is that what's driving what neighborhood you're looking for?
So it's kind of twofold, right? Like I remember, you know, really telling myself like, don't buy for appreciation, even though I could see it so clearly coming, right? Like I could watch the transformation happening, but you're like, don't buy for appreciation. Make your money now. You make your money when you buy. Like all of these things that are so important. And for me, like when I first chose Philadelphia, I was like driving neighborhoods, looking at different properties, and I knew about Brewery Town and I loved Brewery Town, and I also kind of had this seed plan in my mind about, you know, buy on the outskirts of where everyone else is. And I found Strawberry Mansion, and I personally just fell in love with it. And I moved there initially. It's like right on Fairmount Park. The houses are big and beautiful. The streets are big. It's pretty quiet. It's so close to everything. And, you know, I told myself, like, I'm not that unique, right? If I could see myself living here and enjoying it, then I'm not the only one in the world that's going to, like, see this as a good opportunity. And I just clung to that. And, you know, I really, like, found a few things about, you know, developing and living in this neighborhood that were my selling pieces. And, like, I knew it wasn't for everyone. And I just really narrowed down into this small little pocket of the city. And I could walk to almost all my projects. And it was really funny because, you know, at this time, this was, let's say, 2017, 2018, they're like, oh, don't go north of Oxford. So I bought up as much properties on Oxford Street as I could, and I was flipping them, and I was buying them low and selling them high, and I was taking that profit and going a few blocks north and buying apartment buildings and rentals, because it wasn't flip worthy yet. But I'm like, I'm so close. And that's just kind of like, I found this little sweet spot in the market. And I eventually ended up expanding to West Philly. I'm a big nature person, and I have a lot of fun living in the city. But for me, it's so important to have like really easy access to outdoor space and big parks. So my investing strategy was always like be on or as close to Fairmount Park as possible, because you can't take that away, right? Like families, people with kids, young, active people, like it's always going to be a selling point for a lot of different pools of people. So I kind of like went west a little bit and started buying on the other side of Fairmount Park. And I was buying like big apartment buildings for, again, like really cheap. It was a little bit ahead of the curve. And that was like, so my investment strategy, that was like a long-winded answer, was like, you know, being a little bit outside of the hot zone. And, you know, I have never bought anything turnkey. So that philosophy of like, buy the ugly house on the block, like that's for me. I like forced equity and like forced appreciation. So I kind of have always analyzed deals, one for cash flow and two for appreciation. And then there's this thing in the third column that I didn't even this is hilarious. I didn't even know was like part of the advantages is like the third thing is like your mortgage pay down. So like
Yes.
even if you don't cash flow, it's not necessarily a bad deal. Like this property could be making $0, but every single month someone else is paying your mortgage and giving you equity a little bit at a time. And it's like, there's
everybody forgets
and of course
about that one. And then they forget about the tax purposes of that mortgage on top of it too.
Right. I was gonna add that in too. And like there's just so many different benefits, like the taxes are another big one. But
I've been on record by saying I would look at rental properties that for the first year would lose me $200 to $300 a month, because that's fine. Rents will eventually go up. They are still paying my mortgage, which will stay the same. And I'm going to get tax benefits out of that loss anyway. So ultimately, the money that I do make, I get to keep rather than paying the government at the end of the year anyway. So I'm not saying every deal, even if it's losing money, is worth it. But as you say, it doesn't need to be a guaranteed cash flow right off the bat for it to be a good deal.
Exactly.
Now,
and, are we saying like go buy a bunch of properties that don't cash flow? No, but also like depending on what your goals are, like sometimes, if you have a property that's not cash flowing, it doesn't mean you need to throw it away.
Correct.
It doesn't mean it's a bad deal.
Correct. My strategy is a 25 to 30-year hold, if not longer. So that first year it's not that big of a deal in the long scheme of things. And that kind of goes back to that Gary Vee stuff. Like, we got to stop looking at such short-term stuff and start really looking at big pictures. Little things are just blimps. They're just little polka dots on this whole big freaking picture out of it. But yeah, I love it. Now, in the beginning, were you flipping for the cash to be able to hold on to those other ones that you liked long-term?
Absolutely. Yep. In the beginning, I wasn't in the position to hold anything. I was burring at the pretty early on, but initially I had 3 flips going in my first year, and that money I funneled right into the down payments for those burr properties.
Yep. Okay. So, hey, you followed the script though, and you followed the script to the point where, again, in 7 years, you were able to build a lot off of what the advice is out there. And that's awesome. You said you used hard money. You said you used wholesale. Did you use MLS at the same time as well?
Yep.
Nice. So you're using all the different strategies out there. And you were just, again, connecting the pieces that, hey, this house over here needs this financing. This one over here can take this financing, and we'll project it together. And then you found your little niches along the way, which I love. The interior designing, the GC license is such a cool thing to me. I don't know. That one's one that I think is something talking to you has made me think about getting it just for that adventure. You have opened up my eyes to what is possible with that. For small little things that cost, to be able to get that knowledge is well worth that cost.
Yeah, I love it.
And you're truly
work, right? In the beginning, I was listening to podcasts just like this one, and trying to find all the ways that like how this couldn't work for me. It's like, is this possible? And then even when I got started, and I was like, I hope this thing works. I didn't have any like physical evidence, right? Like, I can tell you, I've read a bunch of books, a bunch of podcasts, gone to a bunch of events, but no one in my personal life has ever done this. So it's like, it was all kind of like stories. So I'm like, all right, well, I really believe in it because I've done a lot of research, but there's only one way to find out. And then after my first year, my first flip, I made 6 figures on. it was like definitely like luck was definitely a big part of that. But also I'm like, it works, everybody.
Yeah.
Like one of this screaming from the hilltops, like, you know, it's not rocket science either.
No, well, it isn't. It isn't. It feels like it is when you're on the outside, but once you get into it, you're like, oh, it's not. There's actual formulas to do this stuff for you. There's Excel spreadsheets you can make, and like you can do different things, and it's make it exactly to what you want out of it versus what somebody else is telling you.
Absolutely.
So we're in a tricky situation here with this market. Do you think anything positive, negative, any insight you want to share with where you think the market's going?
I mean, I'm both like really excited for what's happening right now because, you know, I'm in the position where I don't need to sell anything right now. It's just like not a great time if you have to sell something. So, you know, I'm holding my rent is stable. So I don't have like major concerns, but I'm also like, I'm excited for this transition of opportunities that are coming, right? Especially in the commercial real estate space. But I'm also impatient because it's like, when's it gonna happen? And like, now's a good time. And you know, they were saying it for like a year, right? Everyone was like, get your cash ready, get your cash ready, get your cash ready. And now I was doing refis and I was trying to like, you know, pull as much cash as possible. And now it's showing that like, you know, cash is king right now.
Yeah.
With interest rates, and also like you know, we haven't seen a huge adjustment yet. Like sellers are still, they aren't accommodating the high interest rates as much as I would like. I think that's coming. I think we're going to be in this kind of environment for, you know, a little bit. I think it's going to be like the next year or two that we're kind of like in this slow down space of high interest rates. But another thing that I'm really looking forward to is seller financing. We are finally back in the space where seller financing is such a beneficial structure for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. So like that's kind of how I'm solely doing business right now. And I'm doing these shorter term seller financing structures of like, hey, 3 years, you know, it's like in 3 years, we'll probably be in a different, you know, market environment. But for right now, it's like, hey, I'll give you your asking price. You're not going to get that anywhere else. And I'll give you 15 to 20% down. That's no problem. But these are my terms. And these are like, I'll give you interest only payments for X amount of time. And it kind of like, it satisfies everyone. Like they're not going to be able to sell their property at list price with anyone doing financing, like traditionally. So it's just an adjustment, really. Like that's all. Like markets are always changing, and certain strategies work better in certain markets. I'm having trouble finding bird deals that work as great because we're in this weird middle zone of like this purchase price hasn't dropped enough, and you know, so like I'm like kind of waiting for birds to start working again.
I'm glad I'm not the only one with that mentality right now, because birds right now are so tight numbered that they scare me away.
Yeah.
But so after you're done analyzing all these, after you're done checking in on several different companies and your own projects that are going on, how do you unwind after a stressful day, week, month, year?
Well, it sure is easy when you're in Puerto Rico. I just got to say that.
It's not fair. That's not fair.
I know. The amount of times I hear someone say that's not fair. You know, but like I love being outside. I always have. I love like going camping and hiking and music and art, and I'm very like, I love to be the polar opposite of in business mode. But in Puerto Rico, it's like I have access to the beach at any given time. I love swimming. I love snorkeling. I love eating. I love like food touring different areas. Sometimes when I'm bored, I'll like pull up Google Maps and I'll zoom into the coast. And then I'll just start clicking on different restaurants on the coast, and I'll find a restaurant and hit the beach at sunset and try something new.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty beautiful life. I'm really, really grateful.
Yeah, that does sound very, very beautiful down there. I can't wait for your 15-acre property to be closed on and renovated and done, because that's going to be one of my future goals, is to come down and see that.
I mean, we'll have to do like a real estate retreat or something.
Oh God, yes, please.
Yes,
that would be phenomenal out of it. That'd be so cool.
Yes.
But Julia, I know it's been about an hour out of your time, and I know you are sitting at a project in Puerto Rico right now. So I'm going to wrap this up here so that you can get back to your fun, busy day. And I know you've got somebody coming in town right now to visit you as well. So I am so appreciative of your time. Thank you so much. Anything you want to say before you go? Any last handles you want to hand out to anybody and any of our listeners?
I'll just say that you'll have to edit this out because I'm trying to think of the saying.
Nope, you're good.
Be greedy when others are fearful.
Oh.
That is my biggest takeaway for what's happening in the real estate market right now.
I love it. Well, thank you again. That is unfortunately the end of this episode of the Atomic Real Estate Show. There will be more actionable atom-sized bits of advice that will be free for the taking in our next episode. So be sure to tune in next week. Thank you again to our listeners, and especially Julia. You have been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you, and continue doing what you do. You have been so generous with your time and insight, and beginning your investing career all the way up to building your phenomenal base that you have set up now. Good luck in Puerto Rico. And this has been a Direct Subs production. Check them out at directsubs.com. I look forward to hearing from all of you in our comments. And please remember to like, share, follow, and subscribe wherever you choose to listen to the Atomic Real Estate Show.
If you enjoyed our episode, please consider supporting the show by rating and reviewing the podcast. Also, check us out on Instagram at Atomic Real Estate Show to find out when new shows drop and to participate in our community Q&As. The Atomic Real Estate Show was brought to you by Direct Subs. Direct Subs is the #1 place for real estate investors to connect with local contractors for their flips, rentals, renovations, and new construction projects.